You know, we often think of heroes as people who are just different from us, born with something special, some kind of magic gene for courage. But what if I told you that's not true? What if I told you there's actually a blueprint for heroism, a formula that anyone can follow? We're about to dive deep into the story of one man, James Sweat, whose life gives us that exact blueprint. This isn't just a war story. It's a lesson in how ordinary people, people just like you and me, can do the most extraordinary things.
And this is the central mystery, isn't it? It's the question that just doesn't seem to make sense. How does a regular guy, a working man who builds industrial pumps, step into a fighter plane for his very first real fight and in just 15 minutes achieve something most veteran pilots couldn't do in their entire careers? The answer to that question, well, it's everything. It's a powerful formula that you can apply to pretty much anything in life, far beyond a battlefield. So to really understand those 15 minutes that made history, we have to rewind. We have to go back way before the war even started. Because the truth is, James Sweat's journey to becoming a hero didn't begin when the first shots were fired. Nope, it started years and years earlier, on the floor of a machine shop.
Yet before he ever wore a uniform, James Sweat's world was one of gears and valves and horsepower. He literally grew up in his dad's marine pump and turbine company. Think about that for a second. This wasn't some daredevil, some thrill seeker looking for glory. He was a practical, hands-on guy who understood mechanics. He knew how things worked, how to take them apart, and how to put them back together. And this isn't just some random background detail. Trust me, it is the absolute key to everything that happens next.
Okay, now look at this number, 450. This is the number that changes the entire story. Before he even signed up for the military, through a civilian pilot training program, Sweat had already logged 450 hours of flight time. To put that in perspective, that's more flying experience than a lot of his military instructors had. So let's be crystal clear. What he did later on wasn't luck. It wasn't a fluke. It was the direct result of hundreds and hundreds of hours of passionate, focused, dedicated preparation. He built his skill, hour by hour, long before anyone was watching.
All right, let's jump forward to the day where all that preparation meets its moment. It's April 7th, 1943, high in the skies over Guadalcanal. Sweat, who's just 22 years old, has just landed from a routine patrol. His plane is on the ground getting refueled. It's his very first combat assignment. He has absolutely no idea that he's about to fly straight into the single largest enemy air raid since Pearl Harbor. And then, suddenly, the radio just crackles to life. Condition red. Condition very red. Every single pilot on that base knew exactly what that meant. An overwhelming enemy force was just minutes away. There was no time to think, no time to finish refueling. The order was just launch everything you have, now. They literally pulled Sweat out of his debrief and shoved him back into his cockpit. So you scramble into the air and you look up, and this is what you see. 76 Allied fighters trying to get airborne to face 177 incoming Japanese aircraft. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. I mean, let that sink in. This wasn't supposed to be a fair fight. This was a desperate, last-ditch effort to defend the ships below. The odds were just terrible. What happens next is it's a masterclass. On his very first dive into combat, Sweat takes out 3 enemy bombers in 90 seconds, flat. Then he gets separated from his wingman. Now, most new pilots would probably try to get out of there, right? Not Sweat. He finds a new formation of 6 bombers and engages them all by himself. And he doesn't just spray and pray. He calmly, systematically works his way up their line, shooting down 4 more. It's the pump maker at work. You can see it. It's a methodical disassembly of the enemy formation. 7 kills. He became an ace in a day, in his first 15 minutes of combat ever. It's just unbelievable.
But here's the thing, the story doesn't end there. In fact, this is where it takes a completely different turn. His incredible, historic victory was immediately followed by a brutal fight for his own life. The battle was far, far from over.
Okay, I want you to really put yourself in his shoes for a second. You're up there, the adrenaline is pumping. You look down and you see one more bomber lining up a run on the American ships. But your guns are empty. Click, click, click. 1,440 rounds are gone. The smart move, the tactical move, is to turn for home. You've done more than your share. So, what do?
He went for it anyway. With not a single bullet left in his plane, he flew his fighter directly at the Japanese bomber. He was trying to use his plane as a weapon of intimidation, trying to scare the pilot into breaking off his attack. It's a level of courage that it's almost impossible to comprehend.
And that decision came with an enormous price. The bomber's rear gunner didn't back down. He just opened up, riddling Sweat's plane with bullets. The windscreen exploded, sending shards of glass into Sweat's face. His engine took a direct hit, oil pressure plummeted to zero, and finally, the propeller just seized solid. His plane was now a heavy metal glider, and his only option was to put it down in the ocean. And the nightmare still wasn't over. After he hits the water, he's trapped. His harness is snagged and the cockpit is sinking fast. He's underwater, he's running out of air, he's actually drowning. With one last desperate pull, he tears himself free. He's kicking for the surface, pulls the cord for his life vest, and nothing happens. It failed. Just as he's about to lose consciousness, it suddenly, miraculously activates and shoots him to the surface. He was rescued a little while later, but he came that close to dying.
Now, after a story like that, you would expect a certain kind of life, right? Parades, fame, a career in the military. But this is where James Sweat's story gets truly powerful. Because what happened after the war, that's what shows you the true measure of his character.
Of course, he was recognized. There was no way to ignore what he did. He was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest decoration for valor our country can give. And this quote from his citation tells the official story, a story of almost superhuman heroism and gallantry. But here it is, the twist. After the war, after the Medal of Honor, after meeting the president, after becoming one of the most decorated pilots of his entire generation, he just went home. He went back to work in his father's company. He went back to building the same industrial pumps he had left behind. The hero went back to being a working man by choice.
So we've seen what he did, which is incredible. But the real question, the one that matters to us right now, is why? Why does his story still resonate so powerfully today? Let's break down that blueprint he left for us, because I guarantee it has lessons we can all use.
Later in his life, James Sweat would get invited to speak at schools. Now, you'd think he'd get up there and tell these thrilling, edge-of-your-seat stories about dogfights and survival, right? But he almost never did. Which begs the question, what did a man who had seen and done so much believe was actually important enough to pass on to the next generation?
He talked about these things: respect, responsibility, good citizenship, the importance of simply doing your job well, of supporting your teammates. His message wasn't about the glory of combat. His core message was about the quiet, powerful values of being a good person and a competent worker. He taught those kids that real heroism isn't born in a moment of fury. It's rooted in a lifetime of character and preparation.
And it's also critical to see the bigger picture here. An individual act of heroism like Sweat's was absolutely essential, but it was made possible by a massive systemic advantage. America produced over 324,000 aircraft during the war. That's more than Germany and Japan combined. Our whole system was designed to create opportunities for well-trained, well-equipped people like James Sweat to step up and succeed when the moment came.
And that brings us right here to the final payoff, the core of the blueprint. Heroism is not a magic power you're born with. It's a formula, plain and simple. James Sweat's incredible life teaches us that when deep, relentless preparation collides with a moment of opportunity and it's lit on fire by individual courage, ordinary people can do truly extraordinary things. So the real question his story leaves us with is, what are you preparing for?